How's it going, everybody? Today, we're going to talk about bursts. When to burst, when not to burst, when to bait bursts, when not to bait bursts. I see a lot of illegal burst usage. Not good ones. So, first I want to talk about when not to burst. There's three main things you want to know when not to burst. The first one is if the opponent has a huge life lead on you. So, for example, like if it was like something like this, like right here, you probably don't want to burst this. If you have a round to spare, let's say like it's round one, bursting this is pretty bad because the likelihood of you making a comeback is pretty low. The best thing you could do at this point is like try to mount a comeback and then maybe force them to use the burst. So then next round, even though you lost the first one, they're not going to have a burst. So it might be easier for you to win that next round. That's just one example you could do. Another thing you could do, this is a little bit trickier because, you know, the game's new, so you're not going to know everything, is to not burst weak combos. If it can be, like, you know, doable. So, like, something like this, right? If I did a combo like this, you don't want to burst this. Of course, if you don't know Soul, you're not going to know this is a weak damage combo that doesn't really lead to much reward. But once you learn the game more, you want to avoid bursts like this. Like, bursting this is not good. Compared to, like, if I hit you with this, you're going to want to burst. You want to save your burst for something like that. And then the last one is to not burst when your opponent is clearly baiting for it constantly. So if they do stuff like this, if they hit you with dust, and they do this, like they're trying to bait the burst to get a combo, or like they hit you like twice and they jump up for a jump cancel normal, so you can try to block the burst. Stuff like that, you want to avoid bursting because they're just looking for it, so they're giving you more chances. Like they're dropping their combos on purpose and giving you more chances to save your burst and possibly win the round. So you want to avoid using burst in that situation too. But let's talk about appropriate bursts, right? Let's talk about bursts you should do. So one thing that's good is doing gold bursts. So let's say you're in neutral before, let's say they're going to air dash at you, and you're like, damn, I don't want to take this pressure. Doing a burst here is good because you gain all your bar, you get to do whatever pressure you want because you have 100 tension after a gold burst, right? And your burst is at half. So, or not half, but like a little bit over like 25. So compared to like me doing a burst that depletes my whole gauge, like a blue burst, like a normal burst, gold bursts are really good like that. Obviously, they can bait those too, but it's very unlikely that they bait gold bursts. A little bit harder, and a little bit harder to punish gold bursts too. Bursting combos, like we talked about, that's an appropriate time to do it, especially combos that are going to lead to fat damage. You want to burst. Be careful though, because there's certain combos, like Mei, for example, that when she does her command throw in the corner, she puts you up very high into the air. So you want to wait until she gets really close to you to burst. Another one's like Axel too. Axel has combos that are really far away, and because his chains don't have hurt boxes, you want to avoid bursting in that situation because the burst is just going to whiff, and then he's going to punish you anyway. Ramethal too, Ram swords, like if she sends the swords out at you, you can't burst that because there's no hurt box on them. So bursts like that you want to avoid, but bursting combos that like if I did this, like right here at this 5H point, you want to burst because there's nothing you could do to burst bait it. Besides having bar, which is, we're going to talk about that in a second. If you have bar, you have to be careful. But let's say I have no bar and I do this right here, I do 5H into Banner Revolver, that's a good time to burst. Because there's nothing I can do to bait it, pretty much, if I don't have bar. It's not jump cancelable, I'm in recovery and I'm real close to you, that's a good time to burst. Another good time to burst is right before the wall break. Of course, positive meter gain is really powerful, so you want to avoid that. Even though you've taken, like, let's say you've taken quite a bit of damage, if you can avoid, like, right here on this DP, let's say I do this combo, right? Like, right at this combo, this ender, like, where the DP is about to hit, is a good time to burst because even though I'm getting the damage, I avoid the wall break. So I don't have to deal with, you know, possible super hard knockdown wall break or, like, just wall break in general, and they have positive meter. So it's going to be even harder to burst because they're going to have bar to RC and stuff like that. So that's another good time to burst as well. But yeah, so like avoiding the burst, you definitely want to avoid the burst for jump cancel normals, low damage, stuff like that. That's not a good time to burst. Now let's talk about baiting bursts. Baiting bursts is tricky. I feel like a lot of people now are kind of over baiting bursts. Like a lot of people are doing this, which is like okay if you feel like your opponent is like desperate and they're about to die. It's not a bad time to burst, especially if like let's say the roles are reversed. Let's say it was something like this. Let's say it was like this, right? And I'm up a round, and this is Kai's last round. Baiting a burst like this isn't bad because you have such a significant life lead, and the likelihood of them bursting is pretty high because like they can't take the combo. Because if they take the combo, they'll die. So burst, like trying to bait a burst like this is good because it's not a big deal if they don't burst, right? They like know you're gonna bait the burst. You still have a significant life lead, and you're probably keeping pressure too because you hit them. You hit them or you're jump canceling a normal, so you can come down with like jump H, stuff like that. So baiting burst there is pretty decent. Another time to bait burst is probably the best one is during when you have bar. So if you have RC, right? Let's say I do this. I have a bunch of time to wait for him to do something and wait for the burst because, you know, the RC slowdown gives you plenty of time. And then I could complete my combo if I wanted to. So that's a good time to burst. Probably the best time to burst. Especially like in combos like this. Because the game, what's interesting about this game is like, it tells you if someone bursted on your red RC. So for example, right, if I do this, I want you to pay attention to how the red burst looks, right? How like the sound effect and stuff like that. So watch. Now let's say he bursts, right? You see how there's no popping effect on the red RC? That means he burst, right? So let's do it like on hit 2. Right? So the other thing that could happen too is this. If you do this and you hit the pop and they burst on the pop, that's a good time to burst too. If they're baiting it. They could bait it too, of course. But if you do this and it doesn't have the pop effect, that means they bursted. That means you block and you punish the burst. But if it has this effect, that means they didn't burst. So there's a clear distinction whether the red RC basically tells you, it gives you the information whether they burst or not, which is really powerful, I think, because it's not making contact, right? Because they bursted, so the hit isn't connecting, which basically just tells you, hey, they bursted here, you're gonna want to block, and then you get a fat punish. So that's all of the things for burst, how to bait them, how to do them. So yeah, so try to avoid using stuff like this all the time. Trying to bait the burst, like do it appropriately. Sometimes you just want to fight it out. Sometimes you're okay if you have the life lead that they burst on you. It is what it is. It's Guilty Gear. You're not gonna bait every single burst. So sometimes it's just good to be like to force the burst. Like you're going to I'm going to make you burst. Like I'm going to do this combo and you're going to burst. If not, you're going to die. Like sometimes it's better to just make them burst instead of trying to bait every single one. But that's it for me. Hopefully you enjoy the video, and take it easy, guys.